coming, our first official meeting of the 2022-23 school year. We'll start with a roll call. And I'll start over there. And Jane?
Here.
And Bren?
Here.
And Jeannie?
Here.
And Stacy?
Here.
And Larry?
Here.
Awesome. Thank you for being here and everyone. And let's check on the notice of the meeting, Mike.
Meeting was properly noticed.
All right. I'd like to ask someone to approve the adoption of the agenda. Pledges after the adoption.
Oh, it is the other. Sorry.
On our.
Yes.
On our.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Join me in Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Well, we have a fun first event here. Mr. Dukes is getting up to do his work here. We have the opportunity to swear in, welcome the newest student board representative for the school, Dylan Barrow. Thank you, Dylan.
Right, Dylan.
You can have a copy too. I'll read it to you. So I'll read it and then you can just repeat it back to me. So, okay. As the board clerk, it's my duties and responsibilities to swear in or get a pledge going forward. So what will happen, I will say it and then he'll repeat it and then we sign it and then we're done. So I, Dylan Barrow, who have been duly selected to serve as a student representative to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District, swear that I will represent the interest of all students, support the mission, vision, and values of the Pewaukee School Board, and will faithfully discharge the duties and responsibilities as defined in the Board of Education Policy Number 5700.06, Board Student Representative to the best of my ability. So you get to repeat it.
I, Dylan Barrow, who have been duly selected to serve as a student representative to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District, swear that I will represent the interest of all students, support the mission, vision, and values of the Pewaukee School Board, and will faithfully discharge the duties and responsibilities as defined in Board of Education Policy Number 5700, .06, Board Student Representative to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, you are now officially. We're done. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Dylan. So I imagine, Dylan, you've been shown the ropes on what a student representative to the board does.
Yeah, Musab told me some things.
Excellent, excellent. The most important rule to remember is it gets to be 9 o'clock, you get to go home.
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't ever feel like you have to stay past 9. And there'll be some meetings coming up where that will happen, so, yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a voice for your community at school, okay?
Of course, it's my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Next up on the agenda is salutes and recognitions. I'll turn to the board members first for any salutes they'd like to do. Yes, Bren.
I would like to salute Principals Pete Gull and Brian Siegel, as well as teachers, afternoon bus volunteers, Mike and John, who all gave their time to help out with afternoon buses last week. It was awesome to see how many gave their time to help. On Friday, we had 2 late buses, yet with all the help that we had, we got the traffic cleared and kids got into their appropriate cars and headed home safely. So I just wanted to say that I thought it was a great example of our community spirit that we so often see on our campus, and I really appreciate it. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Bren.
Thank you.
Are there any other salutes or recognitions that folks would like to offer today from the board? Okay, I'll turn to the administrative team.
Danielle or John, any salutes? I don't have specific salutes, just there's because they would give Julie a list about a mile long just to think about how the school year started, but we're off to a really good start, and which has been exciting. The staff's doing a great job. It's been largely a very smooth beginning to the school year, so probably too many people to recognize.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, that takes us to comments from citizens. Do we have any cards tonight, Julie? Do not. Is there anybody who would like to make a comment to the board, who would like to turn in a card? Okay. We'll keep moving forward. Sorry?
Hi there. So,
Excuse me, you need to come up to, you need to do a card.
Can you do a card quickly?
Turn in a card and then, yeah, you'll have to come up to the microphone. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
why, hello, good evening. My name is Jessica Shields, and I apologize for being new at all of this, so I didn't know the proper protocol here, so
No worries,
excuse
Jess.
my delay here. Once again, my name is Jessica Shields. I'm a community member, a parent of 4 beautiful daughters that are here, all in the Pewaukee School District. And I'm proud to say that I was a school bus driver for Right Way for quite a number of years. There's several of us here that are from the bus company or were with the bus company. And I also believe another parent that just wanted to really make sure that you guys were aware of the changes of the quality of bus company that we have. I decided to leave the bus company a couple years ago after it just became completely immoral, and there was huge safety concerns. We had gone through all the levels of management because I don't believe in throwing it on Facebook and making it a public thing. I think that there's a certain protocol that you should follow. So we definitely did that. We took it through members of management at our own terminal, then we went above them and above them all the way to the president. It was at that point that we then also went to the school board, and we sent a letter to the school board letting them know so many of the huge safety violations that was occurring and that was known and being accepted at the bus company. We had, Dr. Katie, I think you probably remember our letter that we had sent out, but we had drivers that were on prescription medications, narcotics that are forbidden for any CDL driver. Not only can you not consume them when you're driving, but you can't consume that at any time. It's just part of the CDL regulation. We had management, the terminal manager, who was abusing narcotics and borrowing them from employees. We had drivers that were habitual offenders of talking while, on their cell phone with students on the bus, driving with earbuds in. We had a couple different school bus drivers, one that held a safety position, management position that was worked a full-time third shift job, would come in after working her third shift job to drive our school bus children. And so part of the CDL limitations is that it requires that you get a certain number of sleep after working before continuing to drive, just so that your safety is there and your full attention is there. That particular employee later, after we had brought this concern, left one of our special needs students in a 5-point harness on an 80+ degree day, and it was due to Julie at PLE that student was caught. And it was not caught by the bus company at all. So that student was in a closed bus with the windows up, the bus was not checked, and they were in a 5-point harness with no way for that student to escape. And again, she still is employed by Right Way. Many of these employees that I'm talking about are still current employers. Oh, I didn't realize there was a time limit.
There is.
If you just want to take a few.
If you could wrap it up, that would be
Yep.
great.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
I could go on and on, you guys, about the safety violations, but they are huge. The issue is massive. They have no integrity. We have, the employees that we had were, many of us had 10 plus years with the company, had gone through multiple acquisitions and mergers and changes, and so the shortages that you're seeing in different terminals is not what's happening at our terminal here. We had the employees, we had the quality of employees. We were getting, harassments and fights in parking lots and things that just don't happen in Pewaukee, and we no longer felt safe. After going through all the appropriate avenues that we tried to do and kind of felt short, we had like 12 plus employees that quit. So we just are asking that you guys really do some due diligence and look into some of our phenomenal districts around us, some competition. Dousman Transportation, there's
We're
many,
gonna
many
need you to
other
wrap it up,
avenues.
Jessica. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you, Jessica. I received a card from Ian Gomez. Ian?
Welcome, Ian.
Hello. Hi, my name is Ian. I'm the father of one girl. I just want to know what's going to happen with the bullying that's going on in the bus. It's gotten no better, but it's gotten much worse. On the first day of school, my daughter was spit on all over, in her face, on her clothes. I received no follow-up. I'm pretty angry about it, but I'd rather know, like, are there policies that come with this? What are the consequences? Are there levels to the amount of consequences that come with these kind of issues? It's really frustrating to hear on the first day of school, the same kids that were bullying her last year are continuing to bully her. These are kids that are not even in her grade. They're bigger than she is. I just want to know what's going to happen. Is this going to get any better?
And sir, was this reported to the school administration?
Yes, it was, immediately.
Okay. And has that administration responded to you?
Not to me.
Okay. In which building was this?
This wasn't in a building. This was in a school bus
Right, but which school is your child at?
at Horizon.
Okay, so you spoke to Horizon Administration,
Yes, sir.
so I can follow up with them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any others? All right, moving forward to the consent agenda for this evening. We have minutes of the previous meetings, both the Business Affairs meeting from August 22nd as well as the Board of Education meeting. We have some correspondence. We have some gifts, 2 nice gifts that were given to the district. Diane and Kay Mass for $2,100 to support Aaron Yuskis' trip to the Agents of Change conference, as well as a gift from the Eden Corporation to PHS Robotics in the amount of $1,500. If there's no questions about those items, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I move to, go ahead.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Motion passes to approve the consent agenda. That brings us to the Business Affairs Committee meeting that met earlier this evening. As we know, Brian wasn't there. Stacy, we had a meeting, and do you have some to report out?
We had a meeting and I delegated the reporting to John Gahan.
And I second that.
And Jane seconded.
Tonight the
Very
bus-
shrewd, very shrewd.
Tonight, the Business Affairs Committee met. We began the meeting right at 6 p.m. And the first order of business was going through the check registers. We had several questions from both Stacy and from Jane related to some of the bills payable, particularly around some of the implementations for the start of the school year, like the replacement cycle on the Mac lab, some of the consulting services to get that up and running and integrated into the network, along with a couple of the capital projects that were completed, particularly the kitchen work in Pewaukee High School here and the scope of that work and how that came through on the bills payable. We also reviewed the financial report through the month of August. Again, 2 months into the fiscal year, so 0.76% revenues received at that point in time, which is pretty typical. And again, a reminder for the committee and the board that the end of October will be the budget amendment to adopt the original budget. That's where, after we have our third Friday count, our certification of equalization aid, and our property value certification, that we'll be able to finalize the budget for this fiscal year. We had conversation about the right-way transportation group and the contract extension proposal that we have, and we'll address that later in the agenda. And finally, the committee agreed with the topics that are included within the business affairs calendar. As a reminder, what we do each month at the Business Affairs Committee, we'll take one of the major functional areas of the operations of the district, so nursing, buildings and grounds, transportation, and do a review of where we're at with the program, what's on the horizon with the program, and give the board members a better idea of all of those operations that Danielle's not in charge of.
Just kidding.
I love it. Excellent.
Oh, do we need to?
Yeah, would someone like to make a motion to accept the report out of the Business Affairs Committee?
I move to accept the Business Affairs Committee report.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Thank you, Business Affairs Committee, and John as the spokesperson. And that takes us to new business. We're going to start with the student handbook behavioral addendums that were put forth by all of the schools in the district. Who would like to speak to us first?
Yeah, and I'll have the associate principals just before they come up. This kind of just to remind the board goes back to, if you recall, this was something we discussed with the board. I think, maybe June, when we had some discussion. Last year had some real challenges with behavior, and so this is kind of a follow-up to that, as I know the team spent a lot of time this summer going back and really looking at expectations and how those are going to be conveyed, how those are going to be managed in the school setting. And so this piece, as you know, you've acted previously in the handbook, so this piece was an update kind of following our discussion at the board level. So I want to acknowledge the work of our associate principals in each building, and Shelley Dolby as well, in terms of their work on this update. So with that, Lindsay, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So do you guys all get a copy of this, correct?
Yes.
So this was something we worked together on this summer. We met as all 4 buildings. We just wanted to have some consistent practices, so if there was an incident that occurred, the response was similar across the buildings. Obviously, we take into account that behavior at PLE is going to be handled a little bit differently than at the middle school, high school, so that's taken into account too. But just kind of wanted to add this to our handbook so it's transparent to parents also about just what our expectations are. And then also we take a lot of time during the beginning of the months right now going over behavior expectations so students know what to expect. But just wanted to kind of share with you what our responses would be if those behaviors occur. Do you guys have any questions about them? We're just hoping to add those to our handbook, and then we'll send communication out to families so that they're aware of the change as well.
Lindsay, does this handbook also apply to the special ed students? Are they treated the same, or do they have different rules?
Don't have different rules. You know, we try to have similar expectations, but the teaching practices might be a little bit different. The response might be a little bit different. It really is student focused and student need based, so we're not going to handle every situation exactly the same. We're going to look at the student, what their needs are, but we just wanted to have kind of a roadmap that we could follow just so there was consistent practices as the students go through our buildings.
Yeah, to that point, Jeannie, I mean, I think, you know, and when I look at the handbook, you see that it allows for judgment. Mm-hmm. It gives you a set of options and guidelines, and what I appreciate about it is that you really kind of have to handle those situations. Yes, you have to have consistency, but you also have to look in context of the whole picture, and a student with an IEP might be a major consideration in terms of how you respond. There might be actions that are specified in that student's IEP that help with the decision making in relation to discipline or just behavioral management. But that's one of the things about this addendum, is that we want to be careful about things being overly prescriptive and allow for judgment, so we can consider the context of the situation.
Lindsay, I'd just say I'm really thankful that the team met this summer and worked through this, especially from the context of responding to our staff needs. I know that was one of the challenges last year, is that they felt a little overwhelmed at times,
Yep.
and that came out in the survey, right, in the
Correct.
employee satisfaction survey. So I'm really thankful that the leadership stepped forward and tried to respond to that group as a customer of yours to help make sure that they're getting the support they need.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to give a gold star to whoever included the graduation profile. You get some brownie points for that.
We don't leave any stone unturned as we're working through this process. Yep.
Lindsay, I also like that you have the reflection form for just about every infraction, because I think children don't learn unless they can actually think about what they did, and reflect on it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of a big piece of our, especially it's under the minors level 1. We want to have that reflection happen right away so that we don't move into the other levels.
If I read it correctly and saw all the things in there that I was supposed to look at, but in all cases, parent contact is initiated, right? No questions asked. Their parents will be contacted anytime it's a.
Yeah, so if you look at the top under the different levels, we kind of list out there for teachers how they can move through the levels, whether it's an email, whether it's a phone call, how they move forward. But yes, parent contact is definitely a process.
It could be or may.
Yeah, so that one is one of those things too, where if it's a consistent practice or if it's happening on a daily basis, we also don't want to, call parents every single day to say that. We want to make sure we're being responsive. So I think it's one of those where we want to give teachers kind of that autonomy to decide this is something I need to call on, or this is an everyday occurrence that we're working on in the classroom. So, but definitely want to make sure that parents are aware of the situation regardless of what the behavior is.
Can I ask a question about mobile technology, specifically cell phone and the distractions in the schools? And then, what would a loss of privilege look like for a punishment when a lot of the schools say that the cell phone should stay in their locker during a certain time frame or be put away? So are students just asked to not bring their cell phone to school, or what does that look like? Okay, I can speak to the elementary level. Okay, do you want to? Yeah, if you have elementary questions about that, I can help with that, but I don't. Yeah.
I'm Paul Bursa. I'm the associate principal at the high school. So this is probably the best answered by me, Jane. At the high school, we have taken a little more stringent approach to cell phone use. Specifically, students cannot have them in classrooms, or cannot have them out in classrooms unless the teacher has given them explicit permission to use them for instructional purposes. You'll notice the signs around this room are very different than what you saw last year. They can have them at lunch and use them. They can use them in the hallway during passing time, and that's really it. So if they are in a classroom, the only time we would expect that they might be used is if a teacher had some instructional purpose for them, or some students do better listening to music, quite honestly, like during independent practice. So a little phrase that one of our teachers coined was push play and put it away. So get your playlist going, put it back in your pocket, listen to your music while you're doing your work. That's the extent to which we would expect students to use cell phones during instructional time. If you misuse them, we've gone to a pretty straightforward policy. The first time a student has their cell phone or their earbuds, this gets at your loss of privileges question. First time that they would have their phone out, the teacher would give them a verbal warning to put it away. The second time, if there was a second time, the teacher would keep it till the end of the class. The third time, the device would be forwarded down to the office till the end of the day, and anything beyond that would require a parent to come pick up the phone or earbud, or we would initiate like a contract to say you either can't have your phone, or here are the specific times in which you might access your phone at school, or parent, please just keep the phone at home. We would work with the family to find a little more proactive approach to them using it appropriately at school. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Great. And
That made
ASA is
sense.
a little different than that, but
Yeah.
a little, I'd say pretty similar as well. So
Sounds good.
hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that answers it.
Along those same lines, when it comes to technology misuse, such as school laptops, are their guidelines similar? Are there differences there?
That's got its own whole realm, yeah. So there's a technology, one-to-one technology expectations handbook at the high school, and that's all laid out through from policy all the way down to more prescriptive, specific things in the school. So I can forward you that, Brent, if you'd like.
Sure.
But there's a lot to that. But there are more specific, because that's district technology. There are guidelines that go with that. The parents and students have to sign off through the registration process. That we also go back through it the first 3 days of school with students, and they have to sign off a second time to say that they've acknowledged those policies. They're kind of dense, quite honestly. And I don't know that they read them all word for word, but the reality is that there's places and steps in place rather to encourage them and make them look and read through those policies. So happy to go through that in more depth at some point if you'd like to.
Other questions for our gathered guests? All right, I'll accept the motion if one wants to be offered.
I move to approve the student handbook behavioral addendum as revised and presented.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, team,
Thank
for
you
your
all.
work
We
on
appreciate
this
you
this
over
summer.
taking a look at that, and let us know if you have any other questions or feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up under new business, review of the two-year tactical plan for strategic planning possible approval. Mike, you're going to present this one to us?
Yeah, so this is year 2 of our 3-year plan. So this is really just an update and just to kind of go back to the framework that we use in the process. Year 1 is kind of the big major planning year where new goals are established. Kind of the major framework is established, those kinds of pieces, the mission and vision, everything's examined, if you recall. Those of you that were on the board, our retreats and things that we did. Then last spring, we had a really good night in May with the community to get, towards the end of year 1, some community feedback on how things were going. The administrative team considers that feedback and other data and progress reports from each of the process owners that own strategic plan goal areas. And then we look, all right, so what is the year 2 chunk of this 3-year goal? What does that look like? What does the action plan look like? And those 1-year increments of the 3-year plan are what we call tactical plans. And so you'll see in the documents provided the year 2 kind of updated look at those tactical plans in terms of what are the objectives, what piece are we trying to get accomplished this year of the 3-year goal, what are the key strategies and steps that we're taking. So the vast majority of what was provided to you should have looked very familiar by design, because again we try to have that 3-year commitment to try to move goals forward. The process owners that own those plans are here tonight to answer specific questions if you have them, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have as well. The one thing for the board to consider, it's really what your preference is. Because as you know, a year ago we moved to really this more formalized 3-year plan. You approved the 3-year plan last year. It's really your call if you feel that you need to take action to approve it or just accept it as an item of review, since you really have already approved the plan. So if, I'll defer to you in terms of how you want to function on that.
Well, let's start with questions that the board members may have about the material specifically focused on the year 2 tactical plans and key actions measurements. Were there any questions members had when reviewing that material?
Like Mike said, it seemed very familiar. It seemed very consistent. There was nothing in there that stood out to me.
Any other questions? Larry? Yeah.
Okay, so what did you said about the year 2 and the?
Well, I think what was updated was the stuff in gray in the document. If I caught that properly, it's the.
Well, if you look
yeah.
I'm sorry, Steve. If you look so under each area, obviously we have the 6 strand areas that have the 2 goals, right? So the design of the plan is every key work system, teaching and learning is an example, right? Operations is another. They're going to have a future ready goal and a sustainability goal. So those, if you look down at the summary document, you'll see that 3-year strategic goal listed first. That is unchanged. And then below, you'll see year 2 tactical plan objectives and then key actions. Those are the items that were updated to represent, okay, in year 2, this is the piece of this 3-year goal we're trying to accomplish. So you'll see that first for the future ready goal, and then below that in the gray then would be the sustainability goal for each strand. So where it says year 2 tactical plan objectives and then key actions, those are the areas that have been updated to reflect the key work taking place in the 2nd year of the 3-year plan.
Got it. Thanks for the clarity.
Yep.
Anyway, so the question that I had, and I apologize for not getting it to anybody earlier, and I don't mean to pick on Miranda by any means, but And it was just maybe because it stuck out in the context of our planning sessions that we had this spring. And it was, again, the 3-year goal talked about through extensive research and feedback from stakeholders, a new streamlined, branded, intuitive, and informational district website will be implemented by the start of the 2024-25 school year. And it's just like, okay, well, that's like 2+ full years out. So I don't know, I mean, if there's anything that we can do in between or anything that we could
Well,
accelerate that.
right. So the 23-24 school year is the end of is the third year of the 3-year goals. So if she completes the goal by the end of the 23-24 school year, then it would be in place for the start of that next school year. So
Where is that one?
I don't know which
It's
page. It's
under
under the communication
technology.
and community engagement. It's under the future ready kind of goal. It was just, because it was like one of those that kind of stood out in terms of one of the things that we'd gotten a fair amount of feedback on at those sessions in terms of and again, I'm not picking on you, Miranda.
Yeah, do you have a specific question about?
Well, no, just.
Do you wanna
if there
come to the
was- if there was
microphone, Miranda,
anything that
please?
could do to move it forward quicker, faster, anything that was in the works to partially address the question.
It's on page 9.
Yeah, so like Mike referred to, that would be our goal is to start at that school year. But I broke down the website is a big undertaking. I kind of see it as the first year is the research, second year is development, third year is like the rollout of it. So now I'm in the second year and I'm developing it. I have a lot of different documents that are referenced, and especially in my PDSA, lots of links to show what I'm working on right now about wireframing the website and working with CMS for Schools, which is the platform we're using now, which I researched in year 1 of the tactical plan. So yeah, so it's those 3 years, and then that kind of the 4th year, it kind of seems like, but we'll be ready for that school year specifically.
Thanks.
Of course. Cool.
thank you, Miranda.
Other questions? Would the board like to take action on this or just accept the report? I'm sorry, Stacy, did you have something?
That's what I was gonna say. Because it's the second year, I would be fine with just accepting the report. Is everyone else?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Good. We have consensus. Larry, you good with that?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for the updates to the strategic plan, everyone. I'm sure there was lots of work that went into that over the summer.
Is the second year your favorite year?
They're,
I think it'd be my favorite year.
they're all my favorite years, Steve.
So next up on the agenda, Mike, start of the school year report.
Yeah, and I'd invite others maybe to chime in after my comments. This is a pretty informal report, but again, I mentioned during salutes and recognitions that we're really happy with how the start of the year has functioned, although today was interesting with power outages, so there's always something that will get you up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But no, I've been very impressed with our staff and our operations. Colin's someone I would recognize along with basically every other leader in the district that's had something to do with hiring. We talk about workforce labor shortages, which is a real issue across so many industries. And, we are very nearly 100% staffed, correct, Colin? And we were fully staffed in all teaching positions. You may have read things about districts, large districts that had hundreds of unfilled positions. But we had all positions filled to start the school year in terms of classroom teachers. There were some, a part-time, maybe support position here or there that, which can be a little transient in nature. That we still work on filling, but very well staffed for the start of the year in a tough work environment. So kudos to the leaders who did that, and I would add the quality. Not only did we fill those positions, but we're really excited about the quality professionals that we were able to bring in. So I think that's great. It was just a really feel-good start after, I think everybody would agree, after the last couple of years. It was a little bit more challenging. It was a little bit less typical. This felt a little bit more like a celebration in terms of back to school, feeling like it maybe did in 2019 and before, which was nice to be able to focus on community engagement and kids and learning and have ice cream socials and those kinds of activities where we could bring community into our buildings. What is a strategy that's been implemented for quite a while, I think 8 or 9 years now. Great Start conferences were really successful at our elementary buildings, which I think really set our younger students up for success. I really liked that we had those going on at PLE, and then with the PTO ice cream social right there at the same time that evening was just a really nice feel for the community event. You know, and Danielle, John, if you have anything that you want to add, I want to acknowledge our teachers, our office staff. We did have some transition in those some secretarial positions in those front offices. They've been onboarded effectively. We've made that transition well. So there's always going to be some hiccups, but by and large, I think things have went really well. So I'd be happy to take any questions you have and invite other leaders if you have anything specific you want to share.
Questions from the board? Jane, how's it gone for your daughter so far?
Good. I have to say I've always appreciated Great Start conferences, and the open house at Asa Clark was really helpful. That cleared a lot of nerves, and then I saw that they had they did an open house for the 9th graders at the high school, right, and but yeah, I think it's gone real smooth.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Jane. I'd like to acknowledge Paul and Brian and Shelley, and because the high school tried some different things, and part of that, we did the handbook before. I think part of that was also inspired a little bit by our discussions about how do we proactively and positively set students up to be successful. And so the high school, that was a new piece, and 120, 140-ish kids, 125, showed up to an optional evening to come in and help with their transition to high school. I thought that was hugely successful, in addition to having an open house, in addition to having the fan event in the bleachers with pizza and t-shirts to try to, get some enthusiasm around our student sections for athletics. So acknowledge the high school for trying some different things as well. But really, all the buildings, it just was, and the weather was great. So just things felt good.
Awesome. Any other comments, John, Danielle, you would like to add about the start of the year?
Just think, as Bren mentioned earlier, the all hands on deck approach, and everybody having a part in making sure that we have safe departure, safe arrival, and it's a team effort, and there's nobody who steps down when they're asked to chip in when it comes to helping out. So it's been a great start that way.
Mike, have you had a good strategy for assessing or dealing with the absence as the AP at the middle school this year? I know you had a plan for how to handle that. How's that going?
Well, and yeah, I'd acknowledge Anthony for the work that he's doing. The plan originally was one of our teachers was going to fill in for Ms. Spadoni while she's on leave. That was one area where we didn't find a candidate that we felt acceptable to fill in for that teacher, who's also a math teacher, which is an area of real focus. And it was Mr. Pizzo's decision to say, you know what, I'm just going to try to handle this. And so far, it's early, but so far so good. We're still looking at, we've actually been in contact with our professional associations, ASA, which is the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators, to see if they have recommendations. And I know Anthony's received a list of potential maybe retirees that could maybe sub in an admin piece. He's worked really well with his staff, so he's to be recognized for just kind of the extra lift that he's doing. And so far he's trying to just kind of manage and see how it goes, and certainly we're here to support him. But he's looking to hope he can just maybe lifeboat to November if he needs to, but the door is still open for him to bring in someone to augment staffing if that's what's necessary.
Thank you. Anything else?
I have one. So I've seen several emails about volunteer opportunities in multiple schools, and I was just wondering if we could get an update or some information about if they're having any luck filling all of those volunteer opportunities, or need any extra support. And
Along-
then, yeah, and if there's any more other requests for volunteers, that type of thing, but, I believe we're starting the volunteers a lot earlier this school year because we're back to normal, so, I was happy to see all of that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. So that's another celebration for the start of the year. You'll recall it was, I would want to say February of last year, where we really kind of opened up volunteering back in our schools for really the first time in 2 years, because of visitors coming into the building was limited as a mitigation approach to COVID, and so that was changed last February. One of the things that was a challenge there, and I met with Christine recently about how things have went and what the goals are. But teachers' patterns and approaches are established, right, in some of the programs that we have. If it's not in your regular routine, like expert listeners, math mentors, and those things, I think that was a little bit of a barrier. Just kind of getting back into the swing with that was a little bit more challenging in the middle of the year last year. And so we're excited about this year to kind of start right off with the opportunity to engage those things. And just a couple of pieces to share with you. I know that all the volunteer positions for the Horizon Library were filled, according to Christine. John's talked to the board about the breakfast program that we're implementing. At the time I met with Christine, which was a couple weeks ago, there was 13 people signed up to help out, and that would be 2 to 3 volunteers per day to help out with that new program of breakfast. I know that she was working on, and she had someone in line. Asa Clark was looking for someone to be trained and to help staff and students with like 3D printers and some of the equipment in those areas. 4K buses, she had secured 15 volunteers for those. Lunch recess and PLE lunch volunteers, I knew at the time, and again, this was at the end of August, she was still working on it. So some good pieces there. She reported to me at the time that we have 1,865 volunteers on our list of volunteers. Wow. So, which is a great number, although it is down 100 or so from a couple of years ago, from pre-COVID, but I think that's a pretty impressive number considering.
We could build
Mike, are we
that
back to sending high school volunteers into the elementary buildings?
Yeah, high school volunteers are able to go into the elementary buildings. The expert listening program is available. The math mentors and training the math mentors, all that is back up. So we're full go with volunteers. But I can certainly at any time I could have Christine come and give an update if you guys would like.
Speaking of the breakfast at PLE, how is it going?
John?
I haven't gotten an official report from him yet on the startup of it. I know we've got a significant number of students who are taking the breakfast at each of the grade levels. So it's starting off as we anticipated, and we anticipate it will grow in momentum and then launch at the other buildings.
Any other questions from board members about the start of the school year? Excellent. Let's move on to the next item on our agenda, consideration and possible approval of a contract extension for Go Right Way Transportation Group. John, you gonna kick this off?
So I thank the board members for having this and bringing this forward. So about 7.5 years ago, we came to the board and looking at having bid out transportation and selected a contract with Right Way Transportation. At that point, the family-run business that Right Way was, and their responsiveness to the district and to our situation here. Being on a campus presents all kinds of challenges when it comes to transportation. We're very responsive to working with us to create a plan that would service the needs safely of every student that's in the district. We've been under that initial contract was 4 years. That contract was extended. We added another slight extension and modification during the COVID shutdown period and how that would be handled. And the current agreement now runs through 23-24, the 23-24 school year. Like everything else, transportation has really been hit hard by the cost of inflation. when it comes to the cost of buses, the cost of personnel. In the memo that I've attached in here, and I apologize, I missed it on Friday, that it didn't attach when I stuck it in there. So I'll revisit that in a minute. But we talk about in there about some of the areas where inflation has really hit hard. Our terminal right now has more full-time jobs than most terminals that are out there. Those are full-time jobs with benefits to attract and retain some of the workforce that are in there. It's nearly half of the drivers that are in that terminal. So Right Way has worked really hard to meet the needs of the district, and that's been a consistent approach of theirs throughout the contract from the day that we signed it, is the senior leadership and the ownership team wants to work to make the program successful for the district. So as we approach this on a financial side, looking at a renewal, our rates are lower than what most of the competitors are, and then what most of the rates are around us in the county. Some of it, I believe, could be attributable to the geographic size of the district. We only have about 18 square miles where other districts are larger, so there's more area that they're covering. But a lot of the fixed costs are the same. So the proposal you have is to modify the rates for 22-23, this current school year, in reflection of the inflationary cost and the pressures that are on there, and some of the cost for retaining and attracting drivers and being competitive. By 4.5% for 24-25 would be, we've always had a CPIU clause in our contract where it's CPIU minus food and fuel, but we had a cap in there. So that number for this year for 22-23 would have been about 6.9%. We had a cap at 3%. So really the proposal is instead of 3% to go to 4.5% this year to recognize some of those increased costs. The second year would be the CPIU number, same index, plus 1%. And then the added years, the 3 that would be extended on the contract, would be straight CPIU, February minus food and fuel. So that's a term of the extension. Again, we have felt the same pressures that you read about every day in the paper. I read in the school news statewide with driver shortages and candidates and the pool that you're able to attract to fill these jobs. Our startup has been challenging and covering routes. We have enough drivers that cover all of the regular routes, but if somebody calls in or if somebody is out at the last minute, the backups aren't there. As you've seen, our principals have stepped up. We've had a parent step up and get their CDL to help out with those co-curricular and extracurriculars when we don't have drivers available for them, so that we're not impacting student learning. And Right Way has really stepped up to the plate on that with us to help train those staff members and get them ready to be able to drive the vehicles in those situations where we need them. So the recommendation is to extend it under those terms. We make a commitment to keep working with the leadership team to make sure we have the right personnel and we have the right service level that we expect as a district from them as our contractor. Any questions?
I'll ask the first one. We've heard as a board from some concerned community members about specific concerns with the staff and the performance of the contractor, Right Way. Can you talk to us about the engagement you've had with them and the work you've done with them and the responsiveness that you've gotten from them on any issues that have been brought to your attention?
Mm-hmm. When we have been, so Right Way is the contractor. They employ all of the staff. They're responsible for meeting all the criteria and everything else. When we have been made aware of anything that potentially was creating a not safe situation or a hazardous situation, Right Way has been active in addressing the situation and rectifying it and resolving it. That's why we work with the senior leadership team on there. Often that's beyond just the management of the terminal when that's happening. So they've been responsive and they've addressed the issues proactively.
And you're fully satisfied with the performance that you've gotten from any issues you've escalated to them?
There's a lot of issues that you're dealing with when it comes to a transportation contract. So
Yeah.
Some of them are within our control to say you need to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Other things are beyond our control and they're an employment matter.
Yeah.
So they've been active in addressing those when they do occur.
I can say I've been in those discussions, things that have been raised, some of them that were re-raised here tonight that have been investigated and looked into, and I was with John in those conversations, because if we hear those things, we're certainly going to follow up on those. We're appreciative of the response that we've consistently received from management when we've worked with them. And again, to John's point, we have a contract with them. It's their staff, their employees. So there is that aspect to it. But in those conversations, I've been in those with John whenever there's been those kinds of concerns, and the response has been professional and something that we've been satisfied with.
Other questions from board members?
Just, I have one question, Steve, thanks. If I remember correctly, we have cameras on the buses yet still, so I mean, if there's issues that get identified, you have a way to go back and verify potentially if there was some behaviors or something happening to some extent that's there and what's that. But obviously, it's still a matter of the driver and or somebody bringing it to our attention, right? So.
Correct. So we meet, we set up to improve the communications between both the terminal and the district and our leadership. We set up regular meetings. We meet before the safety committee meeting every month, or every safety committee meeting. And we will review communications as a primary responsibility, because if you're going to have a failure of a relationship, it's going to be because of poor communication. So we make sure that there's good two-way communication between the terminal, the drivers, our associate principals. All three of the associate principals went with me this year on August 16th down to the terminal to reinforce that relationship that we have, and opening the door to each child's future. Those drivers are opening the first door of the day to each child that's coming up here on campus, to make sure that they're a critical part of our mission to meet that.
John, you were addressing that we have routes where we don't have backups. Is Right Way looking to try and hire more to give us more of a cushion as we go through the year?
Yeah, every bus company out there is looking to hire to maintain a ample stable of drivers. Ideally, we have every route covered and have 2 or 3 standby drivers every day. Those standbys will be the ones that are going to end up picking up your extracurriculars and everything else if all of the regular routes are filled. Right now, as of 3 days before school started, we had every route filled. That changed at the last minute, and we're two down with no standby right now. So office staff is doing some of the transportation for the routes on a regular basis, but they have several candidates who are in the training process right now. And that training process, that's one of the commitments. Right Way's not going to put somebody on the road before they're ready to be driving. And they're going to meet all the safety protocols and all the training that they need to have. So that training is occurring right now. That takes 3 to 4 weeks to complete that. So I believe in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we should have a full stable of drivers.
Yeah, and I would say, as John's acknowledged, it's challenging. I mean, you've probably read in the paper yourself, right? There's a nearby district with a competitor company that has 7 routes that have been canceled and are running unfilled for 3 weeks. They estimate minimally. We don't have that. So there are and that's a similar size district, slightly larger. So, and that's the competitiveness over drivers. It's a real challenge.
One other
There you
question, relative to the contract now, I mean, is there an advantage? I mean, obviously, we're a couple years out from it expiring, but is that part of built into our contract that we want to try to renew at least a couple years ahead, or do we get any, is there advantages to us or disadvantages?
With the previous carrier, that was what happened. That was an extension and renewal that was 20 to 25 years. And when the collaboration was not as strong, when we were at the point where we thought it was time to start with a new carrier, we went out to market for the entire proposal, and we elected to make the change. As we look forward now, it's always an option, and if we extend here at the end of the 26-27 school year, we get beyond the driver shortage component and get back to addressing the service levels and how that is delivered, then we have the opportunity there. So,
But the 2-year kind of thing, is that a standard in terms of the industry, that it's a 2-year, we start to renew now at this point in time, 2 years out or not?
typically, a district will renew before the contract expires, because you don't want to be with an expired contract and trying to negotiate for a new carrier.
Not a good idea, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, right now, so I guess maybe the point is, at this point in time, we're in a much better bargaining position, because otherwise, if we don't have a contract, then we're like, what are we gonna do, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, there's always potential that somebody will want to be the service provider in your area. Where our rates are right now and what the renewal looks like, I think it puts us in a favorable position rate-wise, longer term, to be there.
but they're not beating their doors down to come and take over our business, because they can't meet the needs anywhere else anyway, right? So, I mean, there's a limited pool of qualified bus companies out there, right?
That would be something on the contractor side where they felt comfortable.
So you need a motion.
If there are no more questions.
I have a quick
Yeah,
question. But,
please.
as we discussed, John, though, I mean, the other option is to put it out to contract, but that's not a favorable option when it comes to cost.
You always have potential, and this happens in different places. I can't say that it's going to happen here, but you have potential where going out to bid in 2 years as the contract is expiring, that you may not have another carrier who would come into the area, and then you renew with whatever the bid prices are that your incumbent carrier provides you. I've seen that happen before. You could have another carrier who wants to come in, and then it will come down to the decision on service and the known service commodity versus guarantees that are in the process. So the risk is there somebody else who would jump into the ring 2 years from now as a contract expires?
I appreciate, John, you and I are the same age, so I can say this. I've been doing this for a long time, and I trust your knowledge base and your experience that you've had in the past, that this is the right thing for us to do.
I would now seek a motion, Larry, if you want to offer one.
Yeah, move to approve the amendment number 3 between Right Way Bus Service Incorporated, DBA Go Right Way Transportation Group to extend the agreement through the 2026-27 school year per the terms of the amendment number 3.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much, John, for your update. Thank you, board.
Keep doing your due diligence every day as you do, so.
Next up, personnel issues. No resignations, but a couple of employments. 2 still? That's not changed?
Yes, these are, we're at 2 employments. They were hired right before the start of the year. These are 2 of those high-quality employees that we were really pleased. So, special ed is a tough hire. It's not the teaching position where there's a ton of high-quality candidates out there. You're not going to have large applicant pools, but we're very fortunate to find 2 very highly qualified people that we're excited about. I would seek your recommendation for the hiring of Megan Roth, part-time special ed teacher at PHS. Megan, I believe, has worked with us as a job coach for a number of years previous to this. And Christina Gagny, a special ed teacher at Asa Clark Middle School.
Any questions? Anybody want to make a motion?
I move to approve the hiring of Megan Roth and Christina Gagny.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much for those. We have a leave of absence request. Mike?
Yeah, in your packet you have a extended leave of absence request. Jane, thank you for your question on this to clarify. Jane had a question whether the board had to take action on FMLA, but the nature of this is it's an extended beyond the regular term of FMLA. But employee Kendall Strahler is requesting leave for the first semester. Her note is enclosed in your packet. The extended leave after FMLA will be from December 3rd through January 23rd. So that prior term is covered under the FMLA. So we recommend your approval for her leave as requested.
Questions?
What's her position?
She's a support staff, special ed paraprofessional.
I move to approve I don't have it in front of me, the leave of absence request for Kendall Strahler.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to board goals and operations. Review of upcoming activities. First, we have some upcoming board meetings, September 26th, board meeting at 7 p.m., October 10th, business fairs at 6, board at 7, and then October 24th, policy at 6, our first policy meeting of the new school year, and board at 7. Are there other items of note upcoming?
Homecoming.
Homecoming, correct, homecoming. We had a note from Mike about our interest in homecoming this year.
Yeah, Larry had raised the idea of do we try to put a float together for the board as opposed to doing the golf carts. Jane actually has a trailer.
I have a small trailer and then I have access to a larger trailer. But as I said to Mike, I have zero creativity ideas. So I just provide trailer.
I'll provide the candy.
We all contribute to that part of it.
Oh,
So, you know,
I'll take
we're
that one. I don't have to decorate.
we're able to, you know, Julie and Miranda and crew have done a nice job decorating golf carts in the past. I'm sure we could pull something together in a trailer. I'm happy to pull the trailer. You know, the good news there, I said one of the advantages to the process is I love you all, but it's kind of hurting cats when you guys are walking and driving in separate carts and, you know, not having gaps in the parade. No.
I wanted
know.
to enter my golf cart because it's all tricked out.
Yeah. So last year was much improved in terms of our gaps, as Brian Sniff said. You know, you got to maintain spacing in the parade. So that would be an advantage. Go ahead,
I think
John.
there's also a bonus if the superintendent is driving that the parade rider rules will be followed a lot closer than if he's float riding rules.
So if that's what the board would like, I could work with Jane on the trailer, and then, you know, we could figure out getting it decorated if that's what you'd like to do, or if you'd like to continue with the golf carts as in the past, that's worked also, we can stick with that.
But I mean, like Brian and or Jeannie, I mean, you guys typically walk the whole route, right?
Right. But the problem with that then is we tend to get sidetracked by people we know along the sidelines.
Yeah.
And I know you like to interact.
I think it was the cats he was
Yeah.
talking about.
You guys were getting a workout in by the time as we hit that hill.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you guys had really, I give you credit. And I know you like to really interact with people, so I tease a little bit, and I know that that's one of the things that the board has really appreciated about your involvement with that parade. So
And when is the date of that again?
October 7th.
October
Yep.
7th, yeah.
Any concerns about the recommendation for a trailer this year?
I kind of like the idea of golf carts, but I don't know, because yeah, if I want to get off and walk, then I can. Or a trailer, I'm locked in there. I don't know. I guess I'm having a hard time envisioning it.
We have
Well,
one
it's
for
an-
a cart.
Well, I was gonna say, it's an annual event. How about if we try the trailer this year?
Okay,
Go back to the golf
Yeah.
carts. What do you guys think of that?
that's fine.
I think the trailer sounds fun.
Okay, and we got consensus? We'll try the
See
trailer.
what you
this
started,
year?
Larry? See what you started?
I'm okay with it.
All right, so it's trailer.
Trailer it is.
Trailer and a float. All right, Jane will be in touch on that one.
All right.
Excellent. That takes us to Board of Education and Superintendent goal discussion and possible approval. So we got the updated document today. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to take a look at the document. Larry, are you going to walk us through the
Yeah, just as
proposed
you recall from the
language?
last time, we kind of had an update on this. I mean, we did meet in August and worked it through, and Steve was there, Stacy, Jane, and Bren, and also Mike was there for the most part of it. And it's always like a little bit of a, okay, how do we try to pull together lots and lots of different ideas and thoughts? And so what I try to do is to kind of filter that down, make it something that's somewhat understandable and not getting into all the nitty-gritty details with it. So that's, I hope, what's there. And as you know, we typically always have the A1, which is the board goals and superintendent goals related to the strategic plan. So that one really doesn't change very much. We did spend some time on, and I'm going to kind of walk through them, the A's and B's and the board goals, superintendent goals, if you will. So if you don't have a copy of them, I have a couple extras with you.
They should be in your packets.
What's that? Yeah, they were in the packet too,
They're in the
which really
packet,
got
yep.
sent out a little bit later. But we talked about doing something in terms of some kind of a community listening town hall event of some sort. But before we kind of put that in concrete, I think Mike and we talked about having a legal session, working with our district attorney, the school district's attorney, and then either possibly WASB or the district's communication consultant that might help us pull that together. And I think there was general consensus, at least I believe, of the people that were there when we talked about it. We wanted to do something in terms of stuff, but we need to make sure that we got all of our bases covered before we stick ourselves too far out there and put ourselves probably at some risk in terms of doing that. So any comments on that one in terms of any ladies or folks that was? What's that?
It sounds good the way.
Okay, yeah, and I think it's open to the residents of the school district, and I think it's kind of puts in place or puts in motion an attempt on our part, and I don't know if any other school districts in the state have tried it or have done it or have been successful with it, but as you know, I'm always willing to kind of try it, and I think we can make it successful, because I think we have an obligation to be responsive to our community and district residents and listen to what they're telling us and how can we improve, and I think that's a great thing as we go forward with that. So then the next one was starting to talk about that, and again, I read very carefully a lot of the stuff that was in the updated strategic plan and just kind of like always getting regrounded in some of the components. So there might be some overlaps on the C item, which is that information on the overall district plans to respond to that learning loss and counseling and social emotional learning needs that have been identified, and using that RTI process, and it would include the professional development plans for staff, use of the district assessment tools, the student behavior assessments and measures, and counseling staff roles that are part of it. And I think that that's one of those where, as a school district, we've done a pretty good job and tried to stay ahead of some of that. And John, as you know, the ESSER funds almost like require us to have some accountability as it relates to what are we doing with that money that we've got out there. And is that some of the money now that Governor Evers has released, the 90 millions and all that kind of stuff that's out there? I mean, if it's funding, right?
Yeah, that's another tier of funding that was just announced at the beginning of September, so.
So yeah, we have some obligation, I think, to do some accountability reporting on that, and again, for us as a board to be aware of that as well. So, and I think, yeah, the ESSER funding requirements should be referenced in terms of doing that. So any questions on number C or number 3?
I do.
Yes.
I would like to insert 2 words
Okay.
into the language. The very end of that statement in C and 3, where it says student behavior assessments / measures, I would like to add the words and improvement strategies.
Okay, great. On both documents then?
Yes.
Improvement strategies, okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other comments for anybody else with there? I think, again, thanks for that, Steve. That strengthens it in terms of bringing that forward up a little bit higher too, so.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, number D and 5, and this is that board superintendent working relationships and ongoing professional activities. And I did include this one for the idea that we would get exposure to that evaluation tool used for the year end, so that it's not like you walk into the meeting and here it is at 9 o'clock and it's like, oh, well, here we got this thing going. But if we could start to incorporate that into some of our discussions and reviews with Mike, and again, we're using the WSB School Perception Survey, which Jane and Bren have not seen, but I kind of debated in my head whether or not we would go back to that meeting evaluation tool that we used, and I believe we said that we were gonna try to run that again. But I think that might be something that we just go through and do another test run on that one and then incorporate that in. And actually, in the back of my head, Jeannie, I've got some things with the whole board meeting things that if we're gonna evaluate our meetings and our meeting process, we need some guidance around a policy and procedures to do that and take and use that tool. So, I mean, we need to put that on our policy agenda to figure out how do we use that and how do we use that tool. And again, I think it's something that makes sense to us, and some of you know that as we put our meetings on the video broadcast, how have we done? Are we getting any feedback in terms of the people that are listening and watching to that? But the fundamentals of this number 5 and the letter D would be really, or actually it should be probably number 4 on there. I just realized that my sequence didn't work. So it should be number 4 and letter D would be focusing again specifically on that school perceptions survey tool that we have. And we've done that for quite a while, and it gives us sort of at least a frame of reference, and Candace has done an outstanding job with that. We also take that opportunity to have that facilitated discussion with Mike of how do we make sure that we're continuing to build and strengthen those working relationships with the superintendent. And again, if you've not seen it before, and I think that's what we have to have with Melissa. She comes up, she does a great job, and does that right during the same week of the WASB annual convention, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the week that we
She's
do
right
that.
now, we're tentatively, we'd put a date out for January 23rd for
So
that.
any suggestions, improvements on that one, changes, edits, great. So other than it should be number 4, and we can work with you, Julie, in terms of updating this document. Back to the superintendent goals, so I think we just exhausted the board goals. And this one, okay, I apologize for this one, but provide the board with the update on the Malcolm Baldrige framework as used within the district. So if somewhere in a meeting, you can kind of give us an update, Mike, just to help us stay grounded and refreshed in terms of what we do and how we use that at a date and time that you can determine for us when it would be appropriate to do that, so.
Should we
Happy to.
explain kind of the discussion on that one, that we appreciate that the Malcolm Baldrige framework is still utilized, but previously it had kind of talked about when we were gonna apply, is the right word, right? Apply for it, and we didn't want that anymore. So we wanted to just continue to use the framework and get updates on that. Period.
Yeah, and we talked about, at least for now, that the focus would be on application of the framework and making sure, like, for example, and a number of you did it, right? Went through and did the criteria training, that we would have a regular rotation to make sure all leaders continue to get trained in the criteria, that we're current in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, you were there, and I mean, we had a very good turnout. I mean, the instructor guy is one of the, I mean, he's like one of the foundation rocks kind of thing that's been out there with the Malcolm Baldrige program, having been one of the recipients back in the early days at Rochester, or the IBM Rochester, Minnesota organizations, and he works closely with the Wisconsin Forward Award Program, Liz Menzer, et cetera, that's out there. So I think it's just something that keeps us kind of in that reference in terms of doing that. So.
Of course.
And right now, the national level, they've kind of suspended their activities for this year, so they did not have any applications that are out there. And the Wisconsin group is working much more closely with the Minnesota equivalent. I can't remember what the WPN or something like that up there. It does it in terms of Minnesota, so they've maintained good working relationships there as well. So.
Are you okay if we're not going through the application process in the very near future? You sure? Okay.
I think Candace was really okay.
But Julie played a pretty big role in that too.
Yeah,
Julie, are you
really.
okay?
Julie was okay too.
So let me open it up to board members. Questions about what you've seen tonight for the Board of Education goals and superintendent goals presented by Larry?
Larry, I'm wondering if we still need to have the spring assessment in there, because we would have a policy written before then that we could kind of look at when we do the assessment. Or do we want to consider this coming year another pilot yet?
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know when that might, I mean, the assessment of the meetings or the
Meeting
assessment?
The assessment of the meetings.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, Jeannie, on that one.
I think you could have the policy and you could execute the survey that we have been using. And the question I think that came up with the survey was, is this the right survey?
Right.
As opposed to whether it's the right thing to do to have a survey. So the specific tool we use to assess meeting effectiveness can change without the policy having to change. And if it's the right thing to do as a board to be evaluating,
And you're fine with
Practice.
it when we've identified that particular,
But it's kind of not in there as specific.
oh, because it's in the presentation method? I mean, we list it, we completion of the WASB and school perception survey.
well,
Yeah,
that,
but
for
this
that
is
one.
different.
this
Oh,
is
you mean
this
the
is
one we're
board
experimenting
effectiveness,
with?
yeah.
That one?
That one,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I'm
The one we
sorry.
tried out
Okay.
in late May.
Yeah, okay, now I'm with you, okay.
So my point is, we can have a policy that says we're gonna do this, and then we do it, and the tool we use can change if we don't like it or we wanna modify it.
Okay.
I think that would still perform a function, and we could say if the function isn't performed well enough by that tool, we could try something else,
Right.
as long as
I
we're
was
still
just
doing
wondering
something.
if we wanted it in there since it could be considered a goal.
Gotcha.
Let's work through the policy stuff first. Because I think if we take it, and again, it's kind of like a vision in terms of what's out there, with how do we take and use that tool to evaluate our meetings?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm really kind of a fan for is it's like, okay, yeah, we've now are broadcasting these. But a lot of times, I think we talked about it, Danielle, you did with some of the things with the spotlights on learning, spotlights on teaching. We also talked about how do we structure our comments and things that we might submit as questions. So now the format should be that if some questions get submitted, then the person who's presenting on that topic would say, Jane called in or Jane sent in a question, so that the community knows and sees and understands that we are taking the time to address questions. It's not just a rubber stamp approval in terms of everything that comes forward, because we submit questions in advance, and then Mike references it and says, Jane, you asked about this, here's the answer. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but we know that we're raising our due diligence kind of questions that are appropriate in terms of being addressed as we make decisions in terms of this stuff, so. So I think we can spend some time on that. The other part of it is, it's like, okay, all of our meetings that we have out there, and knowing that we, for example, usually in that November timeframe, now we're gonna make a change to say, okay, when we know November, because none of us wants to be here till 10:30, 11 o'clock, midnight, if you will,
Correct.
going through all that stuff. So how can we either start the meetings earlier or refine that meeting to make sure that we have the meetings aligned and the time schedules aligned with the content that we're being presented with, so that there's a correlation, if you will, with that kind of stuff, so.
So Larry, just to reiterate that then, on the policy committee, what we're doing is we're stating that we will come up with an evaluation tool. But the goal is really to find the particular tool that will do the best evaluation.
I think we're on the same page with that one in terms of what's there, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to kind of move this forward without having some guidance and direction via a policy, some procedures that would go along with it, so, but yeah. I think we will really kind of take that tool and see if we can fit it into something that's out there, so.
Any other questions about board or superintendent goals as presented?
If not, I'm willing to move to approve as presented, or we can move.
As
to hold
modified?
until- Or as modified, yes, correct, yes.
Thank you.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Nay? Motion passes. Thank you, team, all of you who participated in the drafting of this year's goals. Moving on, an update on the softball renovation project request. John, is that you?
Yes, so we released the request for proposals to 7 contractors about 2 weeks ago. All of those contractors arrived for a walkthrough last week Tuesday, and we had 7 submittals come in on Friday for wanting to be part of the project with the district.
I
So,
guess there's eagerness for business.
yes, we're in the process of scoping each one of the submittals at this point to make sure that we have consistency in what is being proposed. And our goal is to, by the end of this week, invite 2 finalists in to interview and to talk through their process and how they would see this project taking off and the design, engineering, the type, some little bit of elaboration on what's in the proposals that were submitted. So on time, on schedule to bring this to the September 26th board meeting for approval of the design, engineering, and construction oversight contract.
Questions from board members about the process? Excellent. Okay, moving on, legislative discussion. Anyone has any updates about legislative activities related to school district operations?
Really, the most recent thing was Governor Evers and the release of the additional ESSER funds. Beyond that, it's kind of election time, so there's a lot of that that's going on. We do have SWSA tomorrow morning, so I don't know if Larry, if you have anything there.
What's that?
I don't know if you had anything to add there.
No, other than it's, again, we're kind of reworking through, and we have a standing kind of set of legislative agenda items that are out there, so they focus in terms of, participate in different activities and advocacy goals related to our work going forward. But sustainable funding is usually the main one that we're trying to get after and work with that. So there'll be discussion tomorrow, updating that. I think we also figured out there's like a lot of things that are very, very district specific. So, I mean, SWSA covers all of the 30-some school districts in southeastern Wisconsin. So there's very, very different kind of perspectives in terms of what's out there. But that's what we have to work with and deal with as we go forward with it. So, and we work with the Rami, whatever her name.
Rami. Yep.
Person who lives and works in Madison and schmoozes all of the, or works with all of the legislative people and gets to know them and understands their perspectives there. So she's a great person and really understands our business needs as well as the stuff that goes on in Madison. So
Otherwise known as a lobbyist.
Lobbyist.
yeah.
The lobbyist for SWSA.
Schmoozing of legislators, also known as lobbyists.
Lobbyist.
Thank you, Larry. That's awesome.
And that's one thing, SAA, their lobbyist, John Forrester, is retiring. He's on his way out, and Deep Paddock is his replacement. So I think they're both having some overlap time right now. So at SAA, there's a transition going on there.
Great. Any other items from the group? All right, my least favorite topic on the agenda tonight, election of board officers. So you all know that I have taken a new job and I just can't do this anymore. I just have to step back because my work schedule is unbelievable right now. And it's affecting my ability to help guide this organization. So I'm stepping down as president of the board, effective at our next meeting. So I'm asking for re-elections tonight for president and any other office that would be impacted by who would become president. So I'm disappointed that I have to do this, but this is the way it's got to go.
And just to clarify, you're just stepping down as president.
That's correct. I'm going to remain on the board until such time as I'm no longer in the district, which, to be just out there with all of you, I think will be sometime around the middle of October. Thank you for thank you for that. So my intention is my last meeting will probably be the 10th of October, and I will be here for that meeting.
So you could be on the homecoming float then, or
I will not be there. I will be.
we don't get a Steve, like that.
I'm literally all over the world right now, Larry, and I'm just gone a lot.
Can't
Right
squeeze
now.
in the Pewaukee homecoming parade.
Right, one more.
I'm going to be on an airplane.
Oh, the pressure.
Parade. I'll
On
just say
a
that.
trailer?
I already know where I'll be.
You in?
Yeah. So, yeah. I'm sorry that I have to do this, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to have served. So I will go through the process we're going to follow right now, and then we'll go through the activity of electing a new president who would begin their role on September 26th, plus any other officers we may choose or may need to replace through this process this evening. So we start with secret ballot nominations. Danielle, would you help us with collecting the nominations and the votes? Once all parties are nominated and we know who all the nominees are, those individuals could choose or not choose to accept the nomination, and then we would take a vote. A majority of the board members assembled would need to vote for the successful candidate. So we have 6 board members present tonight, so we'll need 4 votes to elect an individual for an office. And we will repeat that process for any new vacancies that creates on the board in the officer position. Is that clear?
Yes, I do have one question. Given that we have one board member absent, do we know if there's any preference? Is he interested in doing anything other than his current role as treasurer?
I would go back to what he said at the last time we did elections, was that he was happy to serve in any capacity that the board would like him to serve in. That's what I heard just 2 months ago, so 3 months ago, so I wouldn't assume that that's changed. Okay, so now if you would please fill out your nomination for board president. And Danielle will collect those from us.
So we have nominations for Stacy and for Brian.
So now it's time to vote, so we'll take voting for those 2 candidates unless one of those candidates who's present chooses to not accept the nomination.
I accept the nomination.
All right, so please vote for your candidate of choice.
So we have a 5-1 vote for Stacy Newcomer.
Congratulations, Stacy.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Stacy Newcomer.
Congratulations.
And thank you, Steve, for your service as
You're
president.
welcome. It's been my pleasure. Since Stacy is going to be the president of the board effective on September 26th meeting, we now need to vote, to accept nominations and vote for a new vice president of the board. So we will now accept nominations for vice president of the board.
The blue one, right?
We have nominations for Jeannie and Bren.
Do both of you accept the nomination?
Yes.
So now we'll vote.
We have a 4-2 vote for Bren.
Congratulations, Brett.
Congratulations, Brent.
Thank you.
Now, comments from citizens? No cards, I assume, Julie? I have no cards. Excellent. Then I'll seek a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening and your service.
I forgot to ask, when's the first?
Not too bad, Dylan and Musab. First meeting, you got her